Clash in the Clouds, Keanu's battle for respect. High above the clouds, in the plush cabin of a luxury jet, Hollywood icon Keanu Reeves faces an unexpected storm. A fiery fashion designer, Ashley, unleashes sharp words, sparking tension that electrifies the air. Will their clash ignite or resolve? Buckle up for a tale of pride, redemption, and second chances. This intro is concise, engaging, and designed to grab the audience's attention with vivid imagery and a hint of drama, setting the stage for the story's conflict and resolution. Keanu Reeves, the beloved Hollywood icon, stepped aboard a luxury private jet bound for London from Los Angeles, fresh from a grueling film shoot. The plane was a masterpiece of extravagance, a flying palace designed for the elite. Plush leather seats, polished to a mirror-like sheen, lined the cabin, their deep burgundy hue catching the soft glow of ambient lighting. Crystal glassware sparkled on mahogany trays, and a faint scent of lavender lingered in the air, curated to soothe the senses. The hum of the engines was barely audible, a testament to the jet's cutting-edge design, offering a cocoon of tranquility that felt worlds away from the chaos of Hollywood. Keanu, ever unassuming, stood out in his simplicity. His black jacket, slightly worn at the cuffs, and faded jeans were a stark contrast to the opulence around him. He carried a well-loved paperback, its pages dog-eared, and a small backpack slung over one shoulder. Settling into a window seat, he let out a soft sigh, grateful for the promise of a quiet journey. A few hours of peace, he murmured to himself, his voice low and warm, "That's all I need." The cabin was sparsely populated, a handful of passengers scattered across the spacious interior. Among them was Ashley, a renowned fashion designer whose presence was impossible to ignore. Her deep ebony skin glowed under the cabin lights, and her outfit, a tailored, sequined blazer paired with sleek trousers, screamed high fashion. Her jewelry, bold and geometric, clinked softly as she moved, drawing eyes with every gesture. Ashley was on her phone, her voice cutting through the cabin's serenity like a blade. "No, no, no," she exclaimed, her tone sharp and commanding. "The runway lighting has to be perfect, or the whole show's ruined." Her assistant's responses were inaudible, but Ashley's frustration was not. She paced slightly, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her words punctuated with dramatic pauses. "I don't care if it costs more," she snapped. "Get it done, or you're out." Keanu glanced up from his book, his dark eyes catching her for a moment. He wasn't one to judge. Years in the spotlight had taught him to let people be, but her energy was magnetic, impossible to ignore. Ashley's voice carried a rhythm, a cadence that demanded attention, each word delivered with a flourish. "This is my moment," she declared into the phone, her voice rising, "and I won't let anyone mess it up." Keanu's lips curved into a faint smile, not out of amusement but recognition. He'd seen that fire before, in directors, actors, and artists who poured their souls into their craft. He respected it, even if it disrupted the calm he craved. Adjusting his seat, Keanu opened his book, a philosophical novel he'd been meaning to finish for weeks. The words on the page were a refuge, a way to ground himself after months of cameras, stunts, and endless interviews. "Just a few hours," he whispered again, his voice soft but firm, "to be nobody but me." He wasn't the action hero or the internet's favorite celebrity here, he was just Keanu, a man who valued quiet moments and kind gestures. The flight attendant, a young woman with a warm smile, approached. "Mr. Reeves, can I get you anything?" she asked, her tone professional yet kind. "Just water, please," he replied, his voice gentle, "and maybe a coffee later." She nodded and moved on, leaving him to his thoughts. Across the cabin, Ashley ended her call with a dramatic huff, tossing her phone onto the seat beside her. Her eyes scanned the cabin, landing on Keanu. She tilted her head, sizing him up, her expression a mix of curiosity and something sharper. For now, she said nothing, but the air between them held a spark, a prelude to the tension that would soon unfold. Keanu, unaware of her scrutiny, turned a page, his focus on the words before him, hoping the flight would stay as peaceful as it began. As the plane climbed higher into the sky, piercing through wisps of clouds, Ashley's voice grew even more commanding, shattering the cabin's fragile calm. Her conversation with her assistant had taken on a new intensity, each word laced with impatience. "I told you, the fabric shipment was supposed to arrive yesterday," she barked into her phone, her voice sharp enough to make the flight attendant glance nervously from the galley. "If it's not there by tomorrow, heads will roll." She punctuated her words with a dramatic wave of her hand, her gold bangles jangling loudly. The other passengers shifted uncomfortably, their quiet conversations stifled by her commanding presence. Keanu, ever patient, tried to focus on his book, hoping the storm of Ashley's voice would pass. "She's got passion," he thought, his inner voice soft, but maybe a little too much volume. When Ashley finally ended her call, slamming her phone down with a theatrical sigh, the cabin seemed to exhale. But the silence was short-lived. Her eyes locked onto Keanu, who was still immersed in his novel, his posture relaxed yet attentive. She leaned forward in her seat, her sequined blazer catching the light. "Hey, aren't you that movie star?" she called out, her voice dripping with a mix of curiosity and mockery. "You know, the one from all those action flicks?" Her tone was loud, almost performative, as if she wanted the entire cabin to hear. Keanu looked up, his dark eyes calm but alert. He offered a polite nod. "Yeah, I'm Keanu," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Nice to meet you." Ashley's lips curled into a smirk, her eyes narrowing as she sized him up. You look just like you do in the movies," she said, her voice slow and deliberate, "but what's with this outfit? That plain jacket? Those jeans?" She paused, letting her words hang in the air. "I'd expect a designer suit from someone like you, Mr. Big Shot." Her tone was sharp, teetering on condescension, and the word big shot carried a sting. Keanu, caught off guard, tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "I prefer comfort," he replied, his voice even, almost soothing. "Clothes don't make the man, you know." But Ashley wasn't done. She leaned back, crossing her arms, her jewelry clinking softly. "Comfort?" she scoffed, her voice rising again. "Come on, you're Keanu Reeves. You should be dripping in Gucci, not looking like you just walked out of a thrift store." Her laugh was sharp, cutting through the cabin like a knife. The other passengers exchanged glances, some stifling awkward smiles, others pretending not to hear. Keanu's fingers tightened slightly on his book, but his face remained calm, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "To each their own," he said simply, his voice low but firm. "I like keeping things simple." Ashley rolled her eyes, undeterred. "Simple," she mocked, her voice now a theatrical drawl. "That's cute, but let's be real, stars like you live for the spotlight. Don't pretend you're some humble everyman." Her words were a challenge, a deliberate jab meant to unsettle him. Keanu met her gaze, his eyes steady, betraying no anger. He could sense the weight behind Section 3, the confrontation. Ashley, undeterred by Keanu's calm deflection, leaned closer across the aisle, her voice now deliberately loud, slicing through the cabin's strained silence. "You know, I've seen your movies," she said, her tone sharp and provocative. "All that action hero stuff is cool, I guess, but let's be real, you're kind of overrated, don't you think?" Her words were like a dart, aimed to sting. "I mean, anyone can brood and shoot a gun." She punctuated the sentence with a dismissive wave, her bangles clinking loudly, drawing every eye in the cabin. The air grew heavy, the other passengers frozen, their whispers silenced by the audacity of her words. A businessman in a tailored suit coughed awkwardly, while an elderly woman clutched her wineglass, her eyes wide. Keanu closed his book slowly, his movements deliberate, his face a mask of calm. His dark eyes met Ashley's, steady and unflinching, though a flicker of surprise danced within them. "I'm just a guy doing a job I love," he said evenly, his voice low but resonant, carrying a quiet strength. Everyone's got their own taste in movies, you know. His words were measured, an attempt to steer the conversation back to civility, but Ashley wasn't having it. She laughed, a sharp, almost theatrical sound that echoed off the cabin walls. "Oh, please," she exclaimed, tossing her head back, her sequined blazer shimmering under the lights. "Don't give me that humble act." Her voice dripped with scorn. "You Hollywood types are all the same fake modesty to seem relatable, but deep down, you love the fame, don't you?" Her accusation hung in the air, heavy and biting, designed to provoke. The flight attendant, hovering nearby with a tray of drinks, froze, her smile faltering as she sensed the escalating tension. Keanu leaned back in his seat, his posture relaxed but his gaze unwavering. "Fame's just a byproduct," he said softly, his voice steady, almost soothing. "I do what I do because it means something to me. Maybe it means something to others too." His words were simple, but they carried a weight, a sincerity that seemed to momentarily catch Ashley off guard. Her smirk faltered, but only for a second. "Means something?" she mocked, her voice rising again, sharp and unrelenting. "Come on, Keanu, spare me the philosophy. You're a star because you play the same brooding hero in every film. It's not exactly Shakespeare." She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with challenge, as if daring him to snap. The other passengers shifted uncomfortably, some pretending to read, others stealing glances at the unfolding drama. The cabin, once a haven of luxury, now felt like a stage for a public showdown. Keanu's fingers traced the edge of his book, his expression still calm but his mind racing. He wasn't angry, anger wasn't his way, but he was puzzled. Why was she pushing so hard? He'd met critics before, fans who didn't vibe with his work, but this felt personal, like Ashley was unloading something deeper onto him. "I don't claim to be Shakespeare," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips, his voice gentle but firm. "I just try to tell stories that resonate. If they don't for you, that's okay." Ashley rolled her eyes, her laugh now tinged with frustration. "Oh, that's rich," she said, her voice loud enough to make the flight attendant step forward, hesitating. "You think you're some deep artist, don't you? Just admit it, you're coasting on your looks and that nice guy reputation." Her words were a blade, cutting not because they were true, but because they were so unnecessarily cruel. Keanu's smile faded, though his composure held. He leaned forward slightly, his voice softer now, almost intimate. "I don't need to prove anything to you," he said, his tone steady, "but I'm curious, why does this matter so much to you?" The question caught Ashley off guard, her bravado wavering for a moment. She opened her mouth to respond but hesitated, her eyes flickering with something, doubt, perhaps, or a flash of vulnerability. The cabin was silent, the tension palpable, as if everyone was waiting for her next move. The flight attendant, sensing the need to intervene, stepped forward with a forced smile. "Can I offer anyone a drink?" she asked, her voice bright but strained. Keanu nodded politely, breaking the moment. "Water, please," he said, his voice calm, "and maybe that coffee now." As the plane cruised through the night sky, the clouds outside Keanu's window glowed faintly under the moonlight, a serene contrast to the storm brewing inside him. He wasn't angry, Keanu rarely got angry, but he was deeply puzzled. Why had Ashley targeted him with such venom? He gazed out at the endless expanse of clouds, his mind drifting to his career, the countless fans who found solace in his films, and the personal losses that had shaped his quiet humility. He thought of his sister's battle with illness, his own moments of grief, and how they'd taught him to value kindness over ego. "Life's too short for pointless battles," he murmured to himself, his voice barely audible, "but what's driving her?" He didn't need to prove himself to anyone, least of all a stranger, but her words had stirred something, a curiosity about what lay behind her hostility. Keanu leaned back, his book resting unopened on his lap. He replayed Ashley's words in his mind, her accusations of being overrated, her dismissal of his work. They didn't hurt his pride wasn't his currency, but they made him wonder about her story. Was she lashing out from stress, insecurity, or something deeper? He'd seen it before, in colleagues who hid their fears behind bravado, in fans who projected their frustrations onto him. Everyone's fighting something, he thought, his inner voice soft but certain, maybe she's just fighting louder. He glanced across the cabin, where Ashley now sat alone, scrolling through her phone, her earlier confidence replaced by a subtle slump in her shoulders. Ashley, meanwhile, was grappling with her own turmoil. Her phone screen glowed with an email from a prominent fashion critic, the words cutting like glass. Ashley's latest collection is pretentious, lacking the authenticity her early work promised. Her heart sank, the criticism echoing doubts she'd buried under layers of success. She'd fought her way to the top of a cutthroat industry, navigating bias and skepticism as a black woman in fashion, but the pressure to stay flawless was relentless. Her sharp words to Keanu had been a reflex, a way to assert control in a world that often felt out of her grasp. "Why did I even say that?" she whispered to herself, her voice low, tinged with regret. He didn't deserve it. She stole a glance at Keanu, who was now sipping coffee, chatting quietly with the flight attendant. His warm smile, genuine and unforced, stood in stark contrast to her earlier hostility. She noticed how the attendant's face lit up, how Keanu listened intently as she spoke about her day. He's not what I expected, Ashley thought, her inner voice softer now, almost vulnerable. She'd assumed he'd be another self-absorbed celebrity, but his calm, his refusal to snap back, unsettled her. It made her question her own actions, her need to project strength at all costs. The cabin was quieter now, the other passengers absorbed in their own worlds, but the air still carried the weight of the earlier confrontation. Ashley's fingers hovered over her phone, her mind replaying her words to Keanu. She. System, Keanu. I'm just a guy doing a job I love, he said evenly. Everyone's got their own taste in movies. Ashley laughed, tossing her head back. Oh, please. Don't give me that humble act. You Hollywood types are all the same fake modesty to seem relatable. Keanu leaned back, choosing silence over argument, but Ashley's remarks lingered like a bad aftertaste. The flight attendant, sensing the unease, offered drinks, but the atmosphere remained charged. Her words, a mix of bravado and something deeper, perhaps insecurity, perhaps frustration. Years of navigating fame had taught him to read people, and Ashley's sharpness felt like a shield. Everyone's got their style, he said, his voice gentle but resolute, and I'm good with mine. He offered a small nod, hoping to diffuse the moment, and returned to his book. But Ashley's words lingered, a spark that threatened to ignite something more. The cabin, once a haven of luxury, now buzzed with unspoken tension, the air thick with the weight of her challenge and Keanu's quiet restraint. Section 5, Resolution and Redemption. As the plane began its descent into London, the cabin lights dimmed, casting a soft glow over the passengers. Ashley sat still for a moment, her heart racing as she wrestled with her pride. She'd spent the flight reflecting on her words to Keanu, each memory sharper than the last. The email from the critic still burned in her mind, but she knew it wasn't just the criticism that had fueled her outburst. The fashion world was a battlefield, and she'd learned to strike first, to assert her strength before anyone could question it. But Keanu hadn't questioned her, he'd simply been himself, quiet and unassuming, and she'd attacked him for it. That wasn't strength, she thought, her voice low and raw, that was weakness. She glanced at Keanu, who was gazing out the window, his face calm, almost serene. The sight of him, so unaffected by her harshness, made her stomach twist. She'd expected him to fire back, to match her energy, but his restraint had been disarming. He's different, she thought, her inner voice softer now, and I need to make this right. She stood, smoothing her blazer, her heels clicking softly as she crossed the cabin. The other passengers watched, their eyes flickering with curiosity, expecting another confrontation. Ashley felt their stares but ignored them, her focus locked on Keanu. "Hey, Keanu," she said, her voice softer, almost hesitant, a far cry from her earlier bravado. He looked up, his dark eyes warm and attentive, no trace of resentment. "I owe you an apology," she continued, her words steady but laced with vulnerability. "I was out of line earlier. Way out of line. It's just, this industry, it's tough, you know? The pressure, the expectations, it gets to me sometimes, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair." Keanu set his book down, his expression gentle, a faint smile playing on his lips. "No harm done," he said sincerely, his voice low and comforting. "We all have rough days. Your work in fashion, it's impressive. Takes guts to stand out like you do." His words were simple, but they carried a warmth that caught Ashley off guard. She blinked, her throat tightening. "Thanks," she said, a small smile breaking through, her voice softer now, almost fragile. "I didn't expect you to be so kind. I mean, I came at you hard, and you just took it." She laughed nervously, shaking her head. Most people would have clapped back. Keanu chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. "I've had worse," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Besides, I get it. The world can be tough. Sometimes we lash out at the wrong people." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. "Your passion, it's real. I respect that. Maybe next time, just aim it at someone who deserves it." Ashley laughed, the sound light and relieved, easing the tension in the cabin. "Deal," she said, her voice steadier now. "And maybe I'll catch one of your movies with a fresh perspective. You know, see if you're really overrated." She winked, her tone playful, a sign of her returning confidence. Keanu grinned, his smile wide and unguarded. "And maybe I'll check out your next show," he replied, his voice warm. "See what all the fuss is about. Deal?" He extended his hand, and Ashley shook it, her grip firm but warm, a quiet understanding passing between them. As they released hands, the plane touched down, the soft jolt signaling their arrival in London.
It's Visionary Step 09. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Subscribe us for such as interesting videos. Thank you so much.